Today's topic is actually a very apt topic in the sense that in this period of uncertainties, as well as also many people are facing difficulties in their lives, and a lot of our minds are actually in a very disturbed mode. At the same time, we are all in search of some methodology and discipline in order to calm down our minds so that we will then be at peace. We will then be able to go around and do our chores. At the same time, also to deal with the various issues and problems that we have in our hands. So it is important to find out from the teachings of the Buddha, the various philosophies and various practices that we all can use in order to calm down our minds and to be able to cope with all these eventualities. And this topic is also very important in relieving some of the stress that we are all facing, especially in the lockdown and in MCO. And I believe our brother Tambaksun is listening into and at the same time enjoying his peace and calm in the quarantine in Sydney. So welcome, and also may you be well and happy too. All right. We all know that we are all living in a very serious rat race, especially when business are difficult and a lot of jobs are being lost. A lot of businesses are being closed down. And we are now moving in a very fast pace in order to try and keep ourselves at pace with the rest of the communities and the world. So at the same time, we can safely say that we are in what we call a rat race. And the moment we are in a rat race means we are starting to compare ourselves with others about how they have progressed and we have not, how they have become richer and we have not, how they have developed better than we have not. So when we have this kind of comparison, then it is always what we call a rat race. We are sort of competing with each other in order to try and do something about it. And we are all living now in a modern society where money and wealth is very important to a certain extent that we have to accumulate, at the same time spend it wisely. And in this modern society, there are many issues and eventualities that we have to face. And thus, we must be prepared and get ourselves ready, both in the mind and also in the body. So we have to keep our mind calm and peaceful, and at the same time also keep our body well and healthy. So these are what we call the two most important focus that we should concentrate and try to get the best out of it, in the sense that this is only the way that we can prepare ourselves. Now, many a times when you have wealth but you don't have health, you also have what we call sufferings or dukkha. So it's important to make sure that our minds and our body are strong to cope and to face with this modern society. Now, in terms of mental health, there are many stress that we faced, and to a certain extent, things that we do not understand has happened, things we do not expect take its form, and things which we want to happen but didn't happen. And therefore, it gives rise to a lot of stress in our minds. And we feel that we ought to do something to solve it, but it can't. And thus, it prolongs. So many people are actually suffering from, many people are suffering from a lot of difficulties in trying to cope with this stress, right? At the same time, we do have bouts of anger, we do have bouts of disappointment, and we also have a lot of difficulties in trying to control them. And especially when you are in a lockdown, a lot of people find that they can't cope with relationships. They can't cope with being in the same environment with others. And thus a lot of frustration and anger is evident in these very strenuous times. And also we begin to start to have a lot of hatred. I think lately you have noticed that even in the Western world, they develop hatred towards people who are not of their same philosophies and same race. And thus you get a lot of hate crimes being conducted. And people are angry because when things happen to them, they have to find somebody to blame. So again, this affects our mental health. We also have greed evident in these difficult times because we want to have more in order to be able to cope. We want to have a space in order to move. And at the same time, the more we want, the more we need, the more we need, the more we want. And the greed is actually limitless. We will continue to have these difficulties day in, day out. Jealousy is also one of the very difficult emotions that has arisen as a result of being comparing with those who are successful in coping and those who are successful in overcoming and overwhelming even the COVID-19. And you find that countries are jealous of each other. And same thing with the fellow beings who are then finds that certain people benefits most from this type of difficult times, makes a lot of money as a result, and those who really lost and couldn't cope. So there is a sense of jealousy arising in each everyone's mind. As I said, when you have hatred, when you have difficulty in dealing with others, there will also be a lot of ill will. So when you have ill will, then there is a lot of animosity, a lot of anger towards each other. Now, in order to counter all these mental health issues, we have to develop ourselves to be stress-free. And it's important to find the causes of our stress and to be able to detach and at the same time try to be free from it. So this is important, right? So stress is one of the biggest maladies that has affected modern society's living. And we have to find a way to calm down our minds. We have to find a way to actually free our mind from a lot of attachments and defilements. Then only we can be what we call stress-free. And it's also important to, during this period, to develop a lot of loving kindness, radiation our metta towards our fellow beings who are in states of suffering, and also radiate metta to ourselves so that we can take more good care of ourselves. So all the more at this period of time, loving kindness is actually a very important factor. So we need to exhibit more, stress more on loving kindness in our daily lives. Also, we need to show compassion because there are a lot of suffering ones who may not even have food on the table during this period, or they may not be enjoying good health as a result of all the illness that has occurred. So out of compassion, we should shower our assistance and help so as to elevate them out of their suffering. And this compassionate attitude is again very important during this period of time. There is a lot of need for charities. There is a lot of need to help others in terms of materials and in terms of time and also in terms of comfort. So let's call upon our generosity and charitable minds to contribute and to share our access and our availability in order to help others. And this dana or generosity, again, is very important in countering all the mental health problems. At the same time, also, we should share the success. And those who are able to make it, and those who are able to recover, those who are able to overcome their difficulties, let us rejoice in all these good deeds, and let us feel good and happy together with them. So mudita is also, again, very important. And of course, practice a lot of goodwill, think of others. Many a times we are very selfish in our living, but this is the time we should shower a lot of concern and care for others in our communities. And that is where we have to, once a while, call up or visit, and to ensure that they are taken care of, especially the sick and the elderly. Now, we are in a state where we need to have what we call happiness. And the reason is because all the while in our daily lives, we are doing all the best in order to pursue happiness. The reason why we are going out to work very hard, trying to earn a good living, and trying to provide for our families, and trying to get some wealth accumulated. These are all in the pursuit of real happiness. But unfortunately, a lot of this happiness that we have accrued through the possessions that we have, through the materials that we crave for, they are actually not real happiness. They are fleeting happiness. So we need to also address our minds to aspire for achievements that will actually give us long-lasting happiness and not attached to conditions. So the Buddha's teaching is actually one of the best path that we could follow. And the happiness that we accrue as a result of pursuing that path will also give rise to a lot of real happiness or absolute happiness. And today, I think that the important relationship between calming down our minds is to relate ourselves to the power of now. I think many of you have read this book by Eckhart Tolle. In fact, I find that it is very Buddhistic and very much in sync with the Buddha's teachings. And this guide itself teaches us how to actually live in the present and to be aware of the present moments rather than to dwell on our past or rather than to speculate on our future. Because the happiness and the calmness that we accrue is because we are focused and mindful of the present moment that we are in. Because it becomes neutralized. All the emotions and negativities that we accrue as a result of our past or as a result of worrying about our future will then be pacified and be removed by just focusing on the present moments. So there are many books written by him. Eckhart Tolle, The Practicing the Power of Now. There's also a book which talks about stillness speaks, when you calm yourself down by focusing and be mindful of the present. And also there is this guidebook on the power of now itself, the theory behind it. Now we all know that when we are doing our mindfulness is basically the intention to be aware of what is happening to us now. And it's important that when our mind is focused on what we are doing, especially our breathing, our sitting, our walking, our mind will then be free from all the thoughts and actions that we have accrued from our past, which may give rise to a lot of negativities, may give rise to a lot of ill will and bad feelings. This will be avoided, and this will not arise in the minds at that moment of time. On the other hand, there are many uncertainties in the future which we do not know whether it will happen, whether it will affect us, whether we will succumb to it, whether we will suffer as a result of it. But because we did not focus on these future events and happenings, but instead focus on what we are doing now, then our mind will then be free, be liberated from these causes and cravings and disturbances. And in its place, our mind will then slowly sink into calmness and peacefulness. And this is important. So we need to continue to do our practice of bhavana and mental cultivation, because this is the best method to be able to direct our minds and to calm down our minds. Now let me talk about Eckhart Tolle. Now he's a spiritual teacher and author who was born in Germany. And he is educated at the University of London. And of course, at the age of 29, he had a profound inner transformation, which radically changed his course of life. And he began to advocate that people must then focus their minds on the present moment. Now, if you compare with what the Buddha has taught, it is very much in line with the practice. And that our mind must always live in the present moment, because our mind can only do one thing at one time. So if you are focused on the present moment, especially on the object of breathing, on the object of focusing on our bodily positions, on the object of realizing what is the thought that arises at this moment, and also how do we develop that thoughts. All these four bases, what we call satipatthana, there's four bases of mindfulness, will then enhance, calm down, and give us that peace of mind. And if we continuously do this, then our mind will enjoy the conditioning of being peaceful and calm. And it brings a lot of benefits, especially when your mind is calm. A lot of things are going to happen as a result. I've always says that at this moment, that is all there is, there's ever is. And this is a quotation by Eckhart Tolle. Because the only thing that is ultimately real about our journey is the step that we are taking at this moment. Imagine what we are today justifies what we were yesterday. And what we are today will then mold and determine what we will be tomorrow. So what we want to be tomorrow and how we were in the past, yesterday, basically exists within this present moment. And if you are aware of this present moment, you actually justifies your past and prepare you for your future. So the most important moments of our life is not what is in the past. The most important moment of our lives is not what is going to happen in the future. The most important moments of our life is what we are doing now. So whenever we sit down and we want to cultivate and meditate, just ask ourselves one simple question. What am I doing now? And focus your mind on this. Oh, I'm breathing. And I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. And I'm watching my breath going in through my nose to my lungs. And from my lungs out through my nose in my exhaling. So when you are breathing in and out, your mind is focused on this moment of what is happening within your body. And when you are focused on the thoughts that arise in your mind at this moment, you are focused on your mental states. And when you are focused on this present moment of what's happening in the body and the mind, Your mind does not dwell on any thoughts which was in the past. Your mind does not dwell on any thoughts which are in the future. And because it's not disturbed by the past and the future, and basically on these neutral objects of breathing in and out, your mind now will be slowly settling down, stilling, become still. And thus you become peaceful, and you become positive, and you become calm. And this is a very important practice, especially if we do it day in, day out. Even not in our sitting sessions, but in our everyday moments of time, when we are experiencing, be aware of our present moment. Now in marketing, there's always this maxim to tell people that, don't worry about what the person is in the past. Don't worry about what the person is going to be in the future. Just focus on what this person is now and how you should make that person important to you. You will be able to sell a lot of good things. So marketing is also a very good way to represent living in the present, because what is most important person in your life now is the person in front of you at this present moment, and focus your mind on it. And thus you will be able to reap the good results as a result of that focusing. Now there is past and there is future. Especially when you have too much past, there is a lot of guilt. You feel guilty about what you have done in the past. You feel guilty about the wrongs. You feel guilty about the sins that you have committed. And then you regret. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. And with these regrets, does it bring any benefit? Then you have a lot of resentment. You hate that particular situation. You hate that particular person who exists in the past. And you also have a lot of grievances and complaints about what is happening. And you hope that it doesn't happen, but it happens. Therefore, you are actually blaming situations, events, blaming even sometimes people. So that kind of grievance and complaints will then arise. Of course, many of us feel sad. A lot of sadness arises in our minds as a result of thinking about our past, how we have suffered, how our, expectations were not met. And there's always this bitterness. And this bitterness can give rise to a lot of negativities. There's also this question of too much future. Because when you worry about your future, every time, it brings a lot of unease because you are not certain. You are not sure what is going to happen. And this unease feeling makes you jittery, makes you desperate, makes you anxious. And you feel a lot of anxiety. And this anxiety can actually hurt you, both even in the body and the mind. Thus, it then creates a tension, a stress, a very big tension and stress, which actually disrupts the flow of your energies. And it can causes inflammation, causes disruption, and sometimes even causes failure in your bodily actions and organs. And when you worry, because you are not sure what's going to happen, you worry that it will happen to you. You worry that you will be affected by it. You worry that you may not be able to overcome it. And thus this worry is actually very serious. And worries always give rise to stress. And finally, of course, there's this fear. And fear is a result of ignorance, because you are ignorant of what is going to happen. And if that affects you, you are going to suffer, and you fear suffering. So when you have too much of the past and too much of the future, it gives rise to a lot of stress, anxieties, uneasiness, tension, worries. Are these good for our minds? Definitely not. So the best solution is to focus on the present Be present. What is happening now? And just focus on your mind and says, oh, I'm talking, I'm eating, I'm sitting, I'm breathing, I can feel the breeze, I can feel the itchiness, I can feel the pain. And when you're focused on it as a subject or an object, the mind detaches itself, does not become controlled, does not become overwhelmed by these negativities that arises, and thus you become free, you become liberated. You become what we call lightened. So the lightness gives rise to a lot of peace and calmness. You feel so free and so light that you don't get bogged down, you don't get sort of pulled down. You feel that you are floating. That's why when we say we are happy, we are like flying. Because of the lightness, especially the lightness in our mind. And even our body also relaxed. And in a relaxed body, you are very light. The stress gives rise to a lot of weight. You free yourself from that weight. And then in its place, you enjoy the joy and freedom. You feel the joy of being at peace. You feel the joy of being calm and happy. You feel the freedom of not being bound by all these defilements and all these attachments and all these disturbing thoughts. So wouldn't your mind be much better if you are just focused on what is happening now? So living in the now is the truest path to happiness and enlightenment. And this is actually what the Buddha advocates most of the time. Just focus on what you are doing. Just be aware. Just be mindful. And then you will be able to see the rising and the falling, the arising, the appearing and the disappearing. And when you are able to then realize the teachings of the Buddha, anicca, anatta, dukkha, it will be the truest path towards happiness and enlightenment. So realize deeply that the present moment is all you have. It's the most precious moment. It is the most valuable moment of your time. Enjoy it. Feel good about it. Make the now the primary focus of your life. This philosophy, once entrenched, you will always feel light. You will always be free. You will always be happy. You will always be calm at any moment that you are experiencing. So unhappiness is created whenever you are out of that alignment with that present moment, right? So the moment you move out of the present moment and goes into your past, you derive unhappiness and negativities. When you move into the future and start thinking about the future, then again, you feel disturbed by it. But have the confidence that what I'm doing now and what I'm focused now will justify my past. And it would also prepare me for my future. So don't worry about the past. Don't worry about the future. Just be present. So do not stay in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate on the present moment. And your mind will be conditioned. Your mind will be molded and eventually gives rise to the peace and happiness. Again, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, just concentrate on the mind at the present moment. Keep on reminding ourselves. Because if you are depressed, you actually is living in the past. Agree with this. If you are anxious, then you live in the future. But if you are at peace, you live in the present. And this is an age-old saying, even during the times of Lao Tzu. And this truth is verily the best methodology and discipline that we ought to remember and practice at every moment of our life. So the secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past and not to worry about the future, but not to anticipate trouble, but to live this moment, present moment, wisely and earnestly. Again, Thich Nhat Hanh, one of our most famous Buddhist teacher, in many of his quotes, he says, nothing is more precious than being in the present moment, fully alive, fully aware. And he has presented many teachings subscribing to this maxim itself. As during our breathing, he says, breathing in, I calm my body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment. This is the only moment that is important. So he says life is available only in the present moment. Because that is the reality. Because in the past it's already gone, in the future not yet to come. The reality of time is what is happening now. And so watch it. So we have more possibilities available in each moment than we realize. Because when you are focused on the present moment, your mind begins to see things in its true perspective, as they really are, absolute truth. So he always gives a lot of posters, and some of the posters actually keeps on reminding us that what a wonderful moment that we are in when we are in the present. Present moment, wonderful moment. And many of them keep this as a bookmark or as a big poster in their studies and in their workplace. And each time when they are excited, or each time when they are anxious, each time when they are disturbed, they just look at it and says, focus on the present moment. What are you doing now? Be aware. Be mindful. Happiness is here and now. You need to focus and enjoy it. So in order to develop all this, we sometimes have what we call a methodology of understanding the Buddha's teachings, and at the same time applies it and focus on it at this moment. So I'm just giving you some additional methodology. For example, there's this question of the art of letting go, managing of changes, anger management, understanding the forces of nature, the wind and the water, understanding that laughter is the best medicine, having a lot of positive thinking, develop only positive thinking all the time, because if your mind is on positive thinking, then it's not on negative thinking, because it can only do one thing at one time. And always keep pace, one step at a time. So let us talk about the art of letting go. Now we all know in the Four Noble Truths that the reason why we have dukkha is because of that craving and the attachment and the clinging. So if you keep on clinging and keep on attaching, we will never be free. We will always have what we call dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. And the Buddha says once you can identify the cause for your unsatisfactoriness, is that you must be craving for something which you don't want to change. And it changes. Especially when you want to be young forever, you can't. When you start to grow old, then you become unhappy, you become disturbed, you become unsatisfied. Same thing when you want to be healthy all the time, but unfortunately it's inevitable that you have to fall sick one day. And when the sickness arises, again, your mind becomes disturbed by it. Dukkha. And at the same time, when you are breathing your last and you want to live some more, you do not want to die. And that craving for existence will then give rise to a lot of sadness, remorsefulness, unhappiness, anger, hatred. And because that was the cause, the Buddha had in the Third Noble Truth, says that why not you let go? Why not you detach? Why not you stop the clinging and the craving? Don't crave for it. Just be prepared to let it go. And understanding that this is not worth to be held on. But you have to have the art of letting go. It doesn't happen just overnight. It needs to be over a period of time. So as time goes on, you then feel that, no, there is actually nothing for me to get attached to, nothing for me to crave, nothing for me to cling. Since there's nothing for me to crave, I allow it to be let go, and you become very much at ease. The disturbance that arises in the mind becomes specified. You are now more at peace with yourself. And when you are at peace, the minds become calm. Same thing with understanding changes, like what we said earlier, that all phenomena change. Anicca, impermanence. All phenomena that is conditioned to exist will change from one form to another. So even events change. The minds change. The possession that you have will change from its form, which you like, to a form which you do not like. And because of that, if you can manage changes that is happening in our lives, and you're able to accept change, then where is the disturbance? Then the mind becomes more peaceful, the mind becomes more calm. Same thing with anger management. That whenever we see the arising of anger in our minds, we know that it was because of causes of our expectations, of our clinging and of our craving. And that's why we become hateful, we become angry. And if you can understand that, then you managed it by the first two of letting go and managing the changes. And once we're able to master that, our mind again becomes peaceful, our mind becomes calm. Same thing with understanding the forces of nature. That we are all living in an environment where all the energies contributes and we contribute back to. And as a result of understanding the forces of nature, we live in harmony with it. We live in accordance with it. And you will be free from the repercussions. You'll be free from the disturbance. And at all times, always keep a happy mind. Enjoy yourself by looking at the beautiful nature of things and laugh about it. Because there's nothing that should disturb you. Nothing that should make you angry. Nothing that should make you despicable. So therefore, laughter, we always say, is the best medicine. Because by laughing it out, you de-stress yourself. You become at peace. You become calm in your minds. Thinking positive is also one of the important features. It's a practice that we all must have. Negativities are never to be harbored inside our minds. We must always think positive in all eventualities. And when you have positive thoughts, you move forward. When you have negative thoughts, you move backwards. So would you either like to move forward or backwards? So if you want to move forward, always think positive with the hope and with the confidence that you can overcome, with the confidence that you will be able to manage it and overwhelm that difficulty. And once you have that set of mind, you can overcome. Because when you think positive, you will attract positive results. And this is the nature of ourselves and our minds. And like I said, we have to live in harmony with nature. Because nature is the one that can calm us down. Now that we are busy going around modernizing ourselves, sometimes we do not care about nature. And so we must now go back to nature. And the Buddhists are always a lover of nature. Buddhists always tries their best to understand nature and live in harmony with nature. And if we are able to do that, then we will be able to be free from the consequences of the powers of nature. Well, nature can have a lot of powers, which can destroy us, which can disturb us, which can cause us a lot of pain and suffering for us. But if we understand their forces and live in harmony with it, we can manage it and be free from the forces of it, and thus free from the consequences of disturbing nature. So don't disturb nature. Understand it and live in harmony with it. Like I mentioned just now, that you can only do one step at one time. You can't do many things at a time, because that is the nature of our mind. If our mind is actually grasping on the thought, it does not grasp any other thoughts. When you are happy, you are not unhappy. When you are unhappy, you are not happy. You cannot be happy and unhappy at the same time. That is called mad. So when you want to be happy, just be free from your unhappy thoughts. And that actually gives hope in our lives, that when we are in a state of unhappiness, and in order to get out of it, just dwell on the happy thoughts. Keep our mind happy. Keep our mind positive. So when you are able to do that slowly, one step at a time, dealing with each event as it arises, it can make a lot of difference in our mental health. And when our mental health is at peace, so will be our mind will be in calmness. And thus, when we understand all this, it gives us an insight, a realization. It gives us a wisdom that we are able to overcome and overwhelm and keep our mind positive, keep our mind happy, and keep our minds calm and peaceful. So thus, understanding all these practices, we then try to dwell our minds in the 4 sublime states. I do not have to elaborate on this today, but basically, keep your mind with lots of loving kindness, thinking well of others, thinking positively of others. Have a lot of compassion, karuna, where you try to do your best in order to help resolve the suffering of others in whatever ways you can, in whatever possibilities that you can exhibit. Have lots of mudita or sympathetic joy. Share the joy of others. Rejoice together with their success. Rejoice together with their achievements. It also gives rise to a lot of calmness and peacefulness when we rejoice in those good deeds that we do. And lastly, have a stable mind. Have a mind that is not affected by all the vicissitudes of blame and praise, gain and loss, hatred and happiness. And finally, of course, when you are in the states of stability and peace, we call it equanimity or upekkha. And when you are in the states of equanimity, nothing disturbs you. Your mind is not disturbed. And when your mind energies and frequencies are very peaceful and very happy, it attracts a lot of happenings and resultants. And especially when the seeds of our karma, where we have sown in the past, they actually want to germinate in a good, conducive environment. If your mind is positive and happy, that condition or that environment is conducive for the arising of our good karmic seeds. But when your mind is negative and desperate and anxious, these are conditions that is conducive for your negative or your bad karmic seeds. So if you wish to have a lot of good karmic resultants as a result of your good deeds in your past, always maintain sublime states of mind. And this energies that is within us is very conducive and very fertile for all our good seeds of karmas, which we have sown in the past, to be germinated, blossomed, and take its effect upon us. So, of course, while taking care of our mind, we also must take care of our body. Because when our body is at peace, it is also a contribution, an ingredient towards calming down our minds. And you need to do a lot of meditation, relaxation, physical exercise, good sleep, enjoy music, and of course, have a good hot tub. Hot tub means hot bath. Well, these are some of the areas that we try to nurture our bodies. Especially meditation is actually very important to distress ourselves. In the course of our living, we create a lot of stress, a lot of tension, and you can feel the grasping feelings that is existing within the body. We must be able to breathe and relax. And each breath as we take, we say relaxing our body, relaxing, relaxing, and allow the energy to flow and realign itself. And we are able to do that. Blockages, inflammations, which exist, will then start to unfurl itself and start to flow back correctly. And that is where we relieve ourselves from pain, relieve ourselves from inflammation, and sometimes to a certain extent, relieve ourselves from growths and failures of our organs. And thus, meditation not only helps to relieve our mind, to focus our mind, to channel our mind into focusing and mindful of the present moment. It also can be used to relax our body and free our energies. Of course, we must learn to relax. Don't work too hard. You must have your moments of relaxation. Sometimes when we are working on the computers, when we are doing busy drafting our documents, we must always say, okay, stop. I would like to take a break. Take 5. And then just walk around, have a breath, relax, listen to some pleasant music. And this form of relaxation will then help us to distress. And with a healthy, distressed body, it also contributes to a calming of our minds. Exercise is very important. Do your morning walks, do your Tai Chi, do your yogas, and the energies that is within your body is then being unlocked. It is allowed to start flowing. And when you have these energies that flows back, then your body is then in the state of health. And that is our Oriental way of healing. That when a person is sick, it is the energies that is not flowing properly. It must be inflamed, it must be blocked, it must have disruptions as occurred in the body. So it is time that we unfurl ourselves, relax ourselves, push the energies to start to flow, even through acupuncture. And when the energies start to flow, that disease or unease of the body energies will then start to realign back itself. And thus we will then be free from the illness. Even to a certain extent, when we are being attacked by viruses, when we are attacked by bacteria and foreign matters that comes into the body, the way that the body fights it by creating immunities and antibodies is that it must be in a position of strength. And the Oriental way of healing is balance the 4 elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. Because of the imbalances, that's why the body is weak. So therefore, balance it up. When you have more fire, put more water. When you have more wind, deflate the winds. And then bring it back to its balance. And when the 4 elements are balanced, your own body will then prepare its own antibodies and immunities and realign the energies And thus these viruses will then be overcome. And then you will heal yourself. Instead of fighting with an external battle or an external army, you actually create your own army through a healthy balance of energy. So that is physical exercise which helps to align that. Sleep well. Remember, you must have good sleep. And sometimes people say that you may only need 2 to 4 hours. Good. If you can have a deep REMS, that actually do all the housekeeping. Your body then have what we call the alarm flora moving around, cleaning all your rubbish and your poisons and your toxins and discharging it in the proper manner. And thus the toxin does not accumulate, which then causes what we call tumors. So sleep is a way of rejuvenating and cleaning up the various poisons and toxins in our bodies. Relaxation is also enjoying your music. And music has a very soothing method of actually calming down the nerves and calming down the minds. Once a while, put on a very soothing, melodious, harmonious music and relax, close your eyes and feel the peacefulness that arises there. Indeed, this will be a way to calm down our minds. And lastly, of course, do not procrastinate. A lot of people say, oh, I'll do my exercise later, I will hear my music later, I better concentrate. Just do it. Get a time set and do it. Like Nike, always say. And you will then be able to have the opportunity to calm down a lot of your minds. And lastly, of course, smile, don't worry, be happy. And with that kind of happy mind, peaceful mind, your mind will always be calm and happy. So may you rejoice in what you do, and may you be well and happy. And may your minds be calm all the time. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Brother Dato Chia, for the very interesting Dhamma talk. Let's see if there's some questions coming through. But while we're waiting for the questions, perhaps I just wanted to share this thought. You said about these things like the mind can only do one thing at a time. Absolutely true. I think in the past in management style, we always say that to do 2 things at one time is to do nothing. And so therefore, coming back to the concept of, say, for instance, multitasking, I think that should be a misnomer, right? Because you can't really multitask. Your mind cannot do, if you're happy, you're not unhappy, like you said. What's your thoughts on this, Brad?
Well, I give you an example. No? Some people tells me that he can read newspaper and eat breakfast at the same time.
Yeah.
So whenever you are reading your newspaper, you are also eating breakfast. But our mind works in such fast motion that when you are eating, you are not reading. When you are reading, you are not eating.
Oh, okay.
But we sort of like being clouded in the understanding that, it all happens. But you must understand our mind works in moments. So at each moment, you are only having one activity, only one, what you call mental formation. And thus, if you can focus the mind on that mental formations or that thoughts or that activity, then at least you can then get the best out of that thought itself. Otherwise, you will be fleeting here and there, all over the place. And a lot of us are actually very confused and very, to a certain extent, not able to finish our assignments and our jobs because of that fleeting mind all over the place. So in order to be fruitful and to be resourceful and to be able to complete our task, we must focus our mind and finish that task, then move on to the next task. And then you claim multitask. So the multitask only occurs when you finish one task and then go to the next task, not half the task and go to the other half task. Then you are actually not focusing. And a focused mind is always the best, methodology of solving issues and solving problems. That's why the Buddha has encouraged us to first focus on samatha. develop our concentration. True? And once you have that concentration, when you have developed that one-pointedness, use that one-pointedness to observe phenomena by being mindful. So that's when samatha moves into vipassana. And when you are able to be mindful of all the body, feelings and thoughts and development of thoughts, the satipatthana, then you are then able to see the impermanency of phenomena, anicca. And there's no permanent entity for you to grasp, anatta. And thus, if you want to grasp on a permanent entity and you hope that it will remain permanent, you are going to be disappointed and unsatisfied, dukkha. So anicca, anatta, dukkha. And when you're able then to see phenomena in all its absolute truth like this, then you will realize that there is actually nothing for you to be attached to. And when you have nothing to attach to, then you free your mind, you enlighten yourself. And thus that's when enlightenment arises as a result of that realization. So, cannot multitask. If you want to multitask, do one thing at a time. That's why we say one step at a time. So focus your mind on that task. Finish it. Complete it. Then move on to the next task. So you can do many tasks within that period of time, but it was done one at a time. So our mind cannot be too what you call fleeting. And just now, I think I did mention about that when our mind is happy, it's not unhappy. When our mind is unhappy, then it is not happy. You cannot be happy and unhappy at the same time. In Hokkien, we say xiao liao, right? So if you want to be happy, then don't have unhappy thoughts. And if you want to be unhappy, then don't have happy thoughts. But the question here is, it actually gives hope in our life that we don't have to remain unhappy all the time. Because if we want to be happy, just have to let go of our unhappy thoughts. And that gives us hope in life, actually. Because if we cannot do that, then there will be no more hope in life. If we are sunk into unhappy thoughts and unhappy moments, we cannot get out of it. But you can. If you can actually make an effort, the right effort, to try and move away from your unhappy thoughts and focus on your happy thoughts, you're able to overcome. You're able to be ending your suffering or unsatisfactoriness. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, I think Bodhi mentioned this in the chat. Letting go. I love my family very much, especially my children. Do I have to let go now or let go when I'm leaving? Of course, at this moment of time, you are not a saint. You are still a puthujjana. And of course, your letting go is a very much lesser intense. So you still crave for your family, you still attach to your family, you still take care of them, you still concerned about them. But always have the understanding that in the event that they are no longer there, in the event that they are no longer with you, is your mind ready to be detached and says, well, it's part of impermanence. And since it's impermanent and it has to happen, it's inevitable, then I'm prepared to be free from it. And when our mind thinks like that, at that moment, there is no despair and remorse and a lot of unhappy feelings or sadness. Because a lot of people, when they cling on to their loved ones, they become very sad when the loved one is no longer there. But that sadness, put it this way, is fleeting. As long as we slowly begin to understand that, well, they are no longer around, then we will let them go. Even to the extent of some people, when their children are going overseas for studies, well, they cry for a few days. Because why? The attachment is very strong. Well, it's natural. It's not that you are a saint. When the children goes off, it says, oh, I'm what do you call, I'm a saint, I'm not concerned anymore. No, you still worry about them. You still have a lot of feelings for them, and you wish they would be with you all the time. But like all birds, one day they have to fly away. So when the children flies away and stay somewhere else and no longer together with you every day, every moment, well, you allowed it, you managed it, and you will be free from the unsatisfactoriness. Okay?
Yeah, well said. Sorry, there was a bit of a technical problem earlier. I was disconnected. Sorry about that. Yeah. So there are two questions. Just a very simple thought on this. You mentioned about these Brahma Vihara, the four sublime states. Looking at the four metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. I mean, it's only my opinion. The most difficult one is actually mudita. For instance, like sometimes we say, oh, our neighbors, their children all got 10 A's, but my son only got 1 A. And sometimes they say, oh, they bought a beautiful car. I can't even afford it. So they kind of think, I mean, being human, sometimes this kind of create a bit of jealousy. So in reality, how do we practice this, especially mudita, from your point of view?
Altruistic joy or sympathetic joy or mudita, as you said correctly, is one of the most difficult. Most difficult in the sense of, as beings, we are very much what you call comparative. That's why we are in the rat race. And we always want to be on top. We always want to be number one. We always want to be the strongest. We always want to be the best. And because of that, when someone becomes number two, we must destroy him. And that's what happened to America and China now, right? You cannot allow number two to exist. Why? Because eventually he will take over number one.
Yeah.
And therefore, we must destroy him. But if we rejoice in the success of, say, America rejoice in the success of China, right? A lot of sympathetic joy and says, beautiful, you have done well. We are happy for you. We, what you call, prosper together. We become what we call a happy family. If that kind of thoughts can arise, then the world will be very much peaceful. But it is an aspiration. In order to try and achieve a good state of mind, we should aim for this. We should aspire for this. But if we can't, well, at least we do something about it. So if we find that it's the most difficult one, then we practice the other three first.
Yeah.
And then as we are practicing the other three, somehow our mind will then be matured enough, be ripe enough to then slowly move into the ability to rejoice in others' happiness. Practice is not tomorrow that you will succeed, or after this talk you are all going to be enlightened. You need to go over a long period of time, and that's why the Buddha has given us the noble path of right effort. You must make an effort towards that direction and move inch by inch, sedikit lama-lama jadi bukit.